I have discussed with you the motivational process, and suppose we are taking a session on the motivation, and I have talked about the different theories of motivation, need based theories of motivation, and during this particular session we can use the exercise also with the trainees. And then what is supposed to be done is that we have to give them one exercise. They will refer this particular exercise, they will be given the 15 minutes to read that particular exercise and make their plan, and then they will write that particular plan on the whiteboard. I will discuss and interpret that particular plan, and on basis of that we can explain, that is how the different persons are having the different needs and how different approaches are there, and accordingly then we can make the motivational plan. So, this is a theme about that particular session on the motivation, and for this purpose I am having with me my MBA students. I will request them to introduce themselves one by one.
So my name is Rohit Kumar Pandey. I have completed my mechanical engineering from KITS Ramtech Nagpur University. I have 28 months of work experience in Tata Consultancy Services Limited, Nagpur. I am currently pursuing my MBA from IIT Roorkee. I am also doing a live project from thinkingspree.com, and I am also a project manager at Divyang Ek Ummeed, which works towards the inclusiveness of physically disabled people. Yesterday, as the part of the technology management assignment, we gave a presentation on Is Your Company Ready for Digital Future?
My name is Jivesh Agarwal. I did my mechanical engineering from YMC Institute of Engineering, Faridabad. After that, I worked in TCS as a systems engineer. During my TCS working, I also opened a startup named B2Cap Services. Currently, I am pursuing MBA from Department of Management Studies, IIT Roorkee. I also have completed an assignment on technology management on the topic Is Your Company Ready for Digital Future?
Right, very good. Yes.
Good morning everyone. My name is Nivesh Dhote. I have completed my electrical engineering from Samrat Ashok Technological Institute, Vidisha, Madhya Pradesh. After that, I have joined Tata Consultancy Services for 15 months, where I worked as an EIS developer. I am also KPMG Six Sigma certified, and I have done my winter interns at Seco Tools India Limited.
Very good.
Good morning everyone. I am Abhishek Soni. I did my mechanical engineering from Medicaps Institute of Technology, Indore. Followed by that, I have a 52 months of work experience in Infosys Limited, where I worked as a senior engineer and supported on multiple designing projects in automotive domain. Currently, I am pursuing my MBA from IIT Roorkee, and here I am acting as a placement coordinator.
Right. So now I have given you this particular exercise. Please go through that exercise.
Yes, sir.
So, and then you are supposed to make the plan, right? So one by one I will invite you, and then you are write your plan here, right? And like this, now after it is expected, it is after the 15 minutes they will come, and then the trainee will come, and then trainee will write his plan on the whiteboard. Now I have given the exercise to all the trainees, and then I have asked them to solve this particular exercise. Now I will request any one of the trainee to brief what exercise they have received, so that I will confirm that is they have understood the exercise. In case if you are having any question related to the exercise, please feel free to ask me when the exercise will be explained, right?
Yes,
Okay, so you want to
Yes,
explain? Yes.
So I'll quickly brief the exercise. Yeah, Ankita is a 28 years old.
Hmm.
She is a divorced mother of 3 children aged 3, 5 and 7. She is the department head. She earns 37,000 a year on her job and receives another 3,600 a year in child support from her ex-husband. So our participants has to work for a company, and the company has recently installed a flexible benefit program. Instead of the traditional one package benefit fits all, the company is allocating an additional 25% of each employee's annual pay to be used for discretionary benefits. Those benefits and their annual costs are listed below. So we have to design a package for Ankita, and we can deduct maximum 25% from her salary. That is 25% of 37,000. So the
So Rohit, what is the amount of the 25% of the 37,000?
25% of the 37,000 is 9,250 rupees.
Right. So all of you have to plan this particular package for the 9,250. So that is the incentive will be given by the company, and then that now he will read about the list of the benefits, and you can choose any benefits. But then you have to write, and then you have to explain that why you have taken this particular benefit.
So first is supplementary health care for employee. There are 3 plans given. Plan A is 3,000 rupees, which has 90% pay and which is non-deductible. Plan B has a premium of 2,000 rupees, after which 200 is deductible and it pays 80%.
Right.
Plan C is having a premium of 1,500 rupees, after which 1,000 is deductible and it pays 70% of money. After that, we have supplementary health care for dependents. So we have 3 plans here also. Plan A, which has premium of 2,000 rupees, after which 90% is payable.
Right.
Plan B has a premium of 1,500 rupees, after which 200 is deductible and it pays 80%. Plan C has premium of 500, after which 100 is deductible and it pays 70%.
Right.
We also have supplementary dental care plan which has a premium of 500 rupees. So after that is life insurance plan. There are 4 plans covering. The first plan is having a premium of 500 rupees with an annual coverage of 25,000 rupees. Plan B has a premium of 1,000 rupees with an annual coverage of 50,000 rupees. Plan C has a premium of 2,000 rupees with an coverage of 1 lakh rupees. And Plan D also has a premium of 2,000 rupees with a coverage of 2,50,000 rupees.
Right.
So after that we have mental health care plan with the premium of 500 rupees, prepaid legal assistance with 300 rupees as premium. After that we have daycare services that cost 2,000 rupees for all the employees, children regarding of the number. After that we have company transportation to and from the work, which has a cost of 750 rupees, and we also have college tuition reimbursement with 1,000 rupees and language class tuition reimbursement with 500 rupees.
Right.
So the task is we are given 15 minutes to develop our flexible plan, and after that we will come one by one on the board and we have to explain our plan.
Right. And then point number 2 and 3 also guidelines.
Yeah.
After that the entire class, you know?
Yeah. After at the end the entire panel has to discuss the results, how the needs, concerns, and problems of each participant influence the group's decision. How do the results suggest for trying to motivate a diverse workforce?
Right. So therefore this type of the discussion will be there on this particular exercise, and exercise will be solved. So are you ready with so here we have to give them the time for otherwise the 15 minutes, and then they have to go through this whatever has been read by Jinesh, and then they will write about the whatever the plan they think is most suitable. So do you want some time, or you are ready with this particular this? Please check.
I need 5 minutes.
5 minutes then.
Now start with.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Right. So by that time, if you want to also work, you can simultaneously you can work also. Yes. But first Abhishek will come and then he will explain the plan. Yes, Abhishek.
Hello everyone. Like as mentioned by Jivesh, the complete plan about Ankita. So based on that, what expenses I'll be covering in that 25% of the company allocated annual pay. So I'll just write what plan will be as per me. Yeah, since she is a divorced and the only source of income in her family, and she earns around 30,000 a year, So I think out of the supplementary healthcare for employee, I will give her plan A. I'll recommend her to take plan A because it's a non-deductible plan and it can pays 95% of the payout. So in that case, since as I mentioned, she is the only source of income, so is the plays a crucial part in her earnings, family earning. Income, when we come to supplementary health care for dependents, she is having 3 children, so even they play a crucial role because taking care of all the children. So again, plan A, I'll recommend her. And that's gonna cost around 2000 rupees to her. Then comes the life insurance. Also, and this life insurance will be covering the complete family. So with this, I'll suggest her the plan D, which is covering which is giving her maximum coverage of 2,50,000 rupees on a premium of annual premium of 2,000 rupees. So and also the daycare services, since the children are very, I mean, aged 3, 5 and 7, so they are like small only in age, so they need special care when she will be working. So daycare services will be very crucial for her family, and even it will act as a support. And it costs around 2000 rupees to her. Followed by company transportation, which will act as a aid to her and saves time as well. So transportation, I'll recommend her. Which cost around 750 rupees. So in this way, she should break up her 25% of the annual pay which company recommends her, which company pays her, and this cost around 9,250, which is the maximum limit for her. So I think this is the way she should break up her expenses.
Okay, thank you, Abhishek. Now I will request Nivesh to please plan and also give that why he has chosen this particular plan.
From the first plan, which is supplementary health care for employees, I will choose plan C because she is just 28 years old, and I think that health care for dependents is more important. So for her health care, I am giving plan C, which is 1500 rupees. And second comes the supplementary health care for dependents. She has 3 children behind her, so for that, plan A. And life insurance, also she is the only earning member, and after her there are 3 children, so I will go for the plan D, which is providing maximum cover of she is the head of the department and she has 3 kids, so I will go for this mental health plan also. Which is for 500 rupees. She's been divorced by her husband, so I think she will need legal advice in case her husband stops paying for child support. So for this, prepared legal assistant. Which is 300 rupees. And daycare service for her kids, which is now this company provided transportation is also very important, so I like to include that also. this is I guess 2000 rupees. I wrote the coverage, total coverage 750, 3500 divided 6000, 8000, 8000
Please use the duster.
50 rupees. This is my plan.
Again, you can explain
Uh,
why you have taken this plan.
Plan C I chose because she's 20 years old and I think for her other benefits will be more important. So I gave her 1500 rupees plan. For supplementary health care for dependents, it's very important as she has 3 kids and all are small. So I gave her the best plan, which is 2000 rupees. Then for her life insurance, as she has again 3 kids behind her to support after her if something happens to her. So I gave the plan D, which is giving 2,50,000 coverage, which is 2000 plan. And for as she is the departmental head and she's also having 3 kids, she can get stressed, and for that her mental health plan I have given 500 rupees. And she is a divorcee and she gets 3,600 rupees as a annual child support from her husband. So in case if he stops giving that aid, for that I have kept this prepaid legal assistance of 300 rupees, and daycare service for her kids, which is 2000 rupees, and company provided transport for her safety
750.
750.
Okay. Thank you. We will discuss later, right? Okay. Now the Jivesh will.
From the supplementary health care for employee, I will choose plan B for her, as she is a 28 years old mother. So I guess she will require some health care. So I'll choose the plan B, which costs 2000 rupees.
हाँ अच्छा ये ब्लैक वाला ले और आपको बेटा कैमरे की तरफ देख के बोलना है ना.
Yes. So, from the supplementary health care for employee, I will choose plan B for her, as she is a mother and divorcee also. So I'll choose plan B, which costs her 2000 rupees. And from supplementary health care for dependents, I'll choose plan A, as she has 3 dependent children. So this will give her the maximum benefit. I will also choose supplementary dental care plan for her, because she has 3 children and she will require dental care for them. From the life insurance plan, I will choose the plan D.
Like little bit bigger.
This plan will give her the maximum coverage of 2,50,000 rupees. From daycare services, I will also choose the plan, because she has 3 children and she is a working mother. So she will require this daycare service. Well, I will also choose the company provided transport for her, because she has 3 children and she also needs to get home early. So transport. So total comes out to be 9250 rupees. So this is my plan for Ankita.
2004 6 8 yeah ठीक है fine. Yes, okay. So we will discuss it later. Let the Rohit make the plan 4.
So from the first option, that is supplementary healthcare for employee, I will choose plan B, as she is a mother of 3. So I think and also she is of 28 years. So I think a mediocre plan will be sufficient for him. The next plan will be plan A, because supplementary health care for dependents. So she has 3 children of 3, 5 and 7 years. So plan A will be very fruitful for him, for her. From life insurance, I will choose plan D, because it is the best plan that she can take. As she is a divorcee, so she might be facing some legal problems. So I will choose prepaid legal assistance for her. So also daycare services will be best, because she has children, so which can be used for them. So and as she is a female, so transportation, company provided transportation will be very means helpful for her, so that she can use it. So the total will be 9,050 rupees.
₹9,050.
Yes.
Okay, so the same total which is given,
Yes.
right? Okay. Now we have to go through the all the 4 plans, and on basis of this plan we have to understand that is the what is the motivational factor for the each individual, right. So how to identify? The first and foremost is that is the culture plays a very important role. So here the priority has been given to the family, priority has given to the children. So we will go by one and which will show the psychology of that particular trainee or participant, that is the what needs is the most important for that particular participant. So we will start with the plan A. Now here you see, interestingly, the two Jivesh and Rohit have given the 2000 for plan A, while Abhishek has given the 3000 and the Nivesh has given the 1500. Why?
Yes.
Why do you think that you have given the maximum 3000 while others not?
Okay. First of all, plan A is giving her coverage of rupees 3,000, and also she is the only source of income in her family as of now. So like 3,000 amount, if she is annual premium, then she will get 90% money in back, and also no deductible amount is there.
Okay.
So-
Now Nivesh, but you have given the 1500, what he is talking.
Sir,
You have to talk to him.
like Abhishek, like our total amount is 9,250 rupees.
Correct.
So I want to adjust other benefits for
Yeah.
this case, and I thought her health. She's very young. She's 28 years old. So I thought other benefits will, which is regarding to her legal health. Oh, sorry, her legal assistance and mental health will be more
Can be covered. Yeah.
more useful for her. So
No, so do you agree?
So it's I think his approach is also quite good. I
No,
think.
also not also. Do you want to change your plan?
I think I should make it to plan B only
Hmm?
because my sum total, I think it's exceeding.
It's not exceeding. Total is the 9,250 which is allowed.
But I think in this case it's exceeding, sir. I just calculated now by 500 rupees.
9,750.
Yeah, it's going.
It's going the, please make
So
it
I'll
correction.
just make
Correction, huh?
I just. So even I'll go for plan D only, like my other fellow mates, of 2,000 rupees. And even for legal assistance, since I have 1,000 rupees of five,
No, it's perfect now.
no, 8,750.
750.
So 300 rupees I'll give legal assistance, as mentioned by them. Like if the husband stops funding, then 300. So 9050.
9050.
So this is how something.
Okay. Now, for you, what was the any one of you for 2,000 for plan A?
In the first case,
Hmm.
so I took plan B because I think that she is 28 years old. And for dependent there is 2,000 rupees. So 3 children. So for them I think I should give more, and she can 2,000 rupees is sufficient for her, so that any healthcare plan she can she can take advantage of. So
Right.
that's why I chose.
Okay. Now here you see that is the she is 28 years old. So those who have taken, like the Abhishek has first taken the 3,000, it means that Abhishek wants more security. Now adjusting the amount is the another part, but the first thought which has come in his mind is that is to make her more secure. More secure whatever she desires, because she is 28 years old. So she really does not need 3,000, and like this the 2,000 is okay, but Nivesh,
Yes, sir.
1,500
Sir, but I have given mental health plan of 500 rupees.
mental health plan is given,
Yeah.
right. So therefore you wanted to give the more incentives. So what does it mean if the participant wants to give the more incentives, right, and then the list is 1,500 is there. So therefore in that case now we can see plan A, plan B, plan C. Plan A, if the 3,000, that is no risk. Plan B, moderate risk, and plan C, that is the least risk is there, right. So therefore we can interpret that is the Nivesh is going for the least risk of preference is there, and maybe he is confident, oh at this age what will happen, nothing will happen, but yes, so therefore least is important. So he will be more risk taker, he will be taking more risk as compared to others, right. Abhishek is no risk, both of them are having the moderate risk. So when if you want to make them the motivate, for example for the job assignment, for example the any assignment which is requiring travelling, any assignment which is requiring the investment of money, and then we have to understand, and then that need is to be satisfied, that is this is the no risk taker, moderate risk taker, and least bother about the risk. So accordingly we have to propose them the different incentives, right. So that we understand. Now we will come to the dependence benefit, right. Now in dependent benefits, interestingly all have given the 2,000, right. I believe that is the social need. What is the plan? This plan B, plan A into the second is, that is the dependence, dependent care, and therefore the age has been given 3 years, 5 years and 7 years. Therefore all these kids also they are concerned with, that is no, the kids are to be protected, because anyhow that is our culture, that is our family. which type of need Rohit it shows in the motivation of the Maslow's theory of hierarchy of needs? There are the physiological needs, safety needs, social need, self esteem need and self actualization need. So, if all are going through this particular protection of the kids, right, what type of need do you think you all are having?
So I think we are having social need.
Yeah, correct, you are right.
That.
So, right. So, therefore, in that case here you find, so why all of them are concerned with the social? I am very happy to see this, because I feel that this is the Indian culture. If I will do this exercise in Korea, then definitely I will find that there might be the difference. If I will do into USA, then there will be the different plans will be there. So, therefore, here I am very happy that is to share, that is this denotes that is the all are having the social need, love, affection, belongingness, protection, family, united, society. So, this particular reflection is there by these participants. So, now what are, as an organization we have to do, that is the whenever we are introducing the incentive schemes, please take care of the family of the employees, because not only they are looking for the monetary benefits, but they also want to ensure that their families are also protected, and therefore, the second is that is the 2000. So, that will work. So, that black one, yes. So, now it means that this 2000 is okay, right. Now, here in this case, now which one we will go? We will go by 2000, right. Abhishek has also changed his mind after discussion, and therefore, the 2000 is there. So, this and this there is no issue. Now, we will come to the third incentive. Yes, Abhishek, what is that?
Yeah, that is life insurance coverage. So again, I will cover it under safety needs, because on a premium of 2000, it will give a coverage of 2,50,000 rupees to the entire family.
What are the choices?
Others were plan A was on a premium of 500, 25,000 coverage. On 1,000 rupees premium, it's 50,000 coverage. And again on 2,000 rupees, 1 lakh coverage.
No, 2000 rupees,
Yeah.
1 lakh coverage.
1 lakh coverage.
So, 2000, 1000 and 500.
500. correct.
Three are there?
Other three.
3 are there.
One more 2,000 of 2,50,000 coverage.
So, amount is 2000.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
coverage
coverage
is
is
2,50,000.
That is a fine. Amount is 2000, and then
And two coverages are there on same amount.
So, on the same amount, right. So, okay, then that is okay. So, that is a 2000, okay. Now, here, but I have a different opinion, right. Now, this is the life insurance plan for Ankita, right. So, now when we are talking about the plan B for 2000, right, that is a healthcare plan for her, then here we are what was the logic? Logic was she is young, and therefore, there is no need for this for giving the highest package for this. Then second also we have taken care, second we have taken the maximum.
Yes, sir.
Jeevesh, we have taken the maximum. So, second we have taken the maximum, here also we have moderately protected, and then here again if this logic is there, then the life insurance at the age of 28, right. I think that is the 2000 is too much. Again this is the over protection. So, it is an emotional decision, right. So, one message is that is the okay, our employees need this type of the protection, that is the one thing. But when I want to link it with the policy making and the rationality, I would like to go for the 1000,
150,000.
right. So, therefore, it is the 2000, right, this is 2000, and here I would like to go for 1000. Right. So, therefore, it will be here will be the 1000, right. Now, one by one, now from here actually it is a beauty, that is from after this more or less it was same, however, there was a difference also, but rest of the incentives they are the pure mirror of the thought process of an individual. So, Abhishek, that is the daycare, he is going for the daycare, right, he is going for the daycare, he is going for the daycare and he is going for the daycare services, right. Now, here one thing on the basis of my discussion in other training programs I would like to share. What does the daycare means? She has to go and she has to drop the children there, right, and while coming from the office she has to take, right. So, it will binding her for the particular time period. So, this will disturb her at the workplace. If there is an important meeting is going on, but the daycare will close, so she has to come and then the take, right. She has to drop early also and then she has to manage. So, here we will, I will put here the question mark in the daycare. However, all of you have given this service, so we may consider it later on, but here the daycare, because this is, she is at the age of 28, she is manager. So, she is the very much career oriented, right, and therefore, she also not having the support of husband, she is divorcee. So, there in that case this timing, binding the timings at the workplace is a big decision. So, that we can discuss later on, that is the first what are essentials that we will see and then we will go for the daycare. So, this I have the particular reservation. Similarly, for the transportation. So, when you are talking about the company's transportation and if there is a choice, basically here it is a choice. So, then again she will be bounded by the timings, she has to reach at the bus stop at particular time and she has to leave, she cannot manage, right, otherwise she will miss the bus of this company. So, therefore, in that case again I will put here the question mark. On the same logic, that is the whatever it is there or not. However, we will have the discussion and then we will come out with the common. I have no reservation as such, but I will put the question mark about these particular questions. Legal assistance, right. So, legal assistance again here it is given 300, 300, okay. Jivesh, you have not given, Jivesh, you have not given the 300.
Yes, sir.
Why not?
Because sir, I gave more importance to supplementary dental plan.
Why?
Because I think she is having 3 children, so for them the dental plan will be more important. Because at the like when the child is young, so new teeth will come. So she will require more of the dental
No, they are
plan.
3 years old, so better no new teeth will come at the age of 3 years. Okay, anyways, but except you, anybody else is given this dental plan?
No.
Hmm?
No, I think.
So, why you have not given the dental?
I thought, sir, according to my 9,250, I have to manage. So I can reduce this thing. I thought, like.
That was the one rational logical. Otherwise, the logic which has been given, that is the there will be the dental need, right. First thing is that is this dental plan is for employee, not for the children,
Yes, sir.
right. So, therefore, in that case we can avoid the dental.
Yes, sir.
At this age we can avoid the dental plan. So, therefore, I write here, you know, where is the dental plan? Here, Jivesh, okay. So, we put it cross, that if we will not take the dental plan. Do all of you agree, or you think,
Yes, sir,
or you might have considered it for the children,
Yes, sir, I
basically,
considered it
for children,
then
that is why you have given the dental plan. So, dental plan will not be there. So, this will not be working, right. Now, we have completed with this. Now, plan C we have completed, है ना? This we have decided, plan A we have decided, plan D we have decided. Okay. Mental health plan. Mental health plan is given by Nivesh,
Yes, sir.
right. mental health is not given by Jivesh, okay, right, and Rohit has not given the mental plan, right. So, only you have given the mental plan, okay. Why?
Yeah. It is written that she is the head of the department,
Hmm.
and she must be having stress. And with this head of the department responsibilities, she has three kids at home.
You have to convince them actually,
Yeah.
those who are not given.
She is the departmental head. So I think the work is more related to responsibilities, and she must be having some responsibilities in office as well as at home. She has 3 children,
Yeah.
and they all are like below the elder one is 7 years old. So I think for her mental care can be included in her package.
But she is a department head, so she is also manager. So
Yeah.
she can manage all these things like the home and the office also. So in my opinion, there is no need for mental health care plan. I think all of us will
Even
also agree.
my points are similar to Jivesh only.
Yes.
Like they handling 3 children, although it will be, but I think she can manage.
But
Yes.
there
That's
is
why I'm
one
not
more
looking.
point that she's just got divorced. That can also affect her mental health. The whole responsibility of children are on her only.
Yes, they are on her, but she is also an earning mother.
Yeah.
So she can just take the daycare services and other services which are more beneficial, which will be beneficial to manage her time well.
And being a diversity, like handling 3 children, and by self motivation she can overcome whatever like weaknesses or fears she might be,
Okay.
emotional lowness,
Hmm.
she can overcome by self motivation.
What was your logic?
I also think that taking a mental plan actually she's already managing so much things and she has already self motivation to handle this 3 children and she is also manager. So I don't think so that mental plan will be something that she should take. She's already self motivated as
Yeah.
already said by Abhishek. So I support that.
Now, what is your opinion? No, don't get influenced by them. If you still think that is, then you continue
So,
because
I believe that manager also do get stress.
stress will be
Stress
there,
is also there for managers also.
right?
Okay.
Yeah, like any position of manager, we are telling that she is a manager, but I have seen that manager also work under very high pressure and corporate work.
Stress will be there, but
Stress
their
will be
logic is that she has taken divorce, right, and she has reached at this age at the manager position, so she is highly motivated and highly self dependent, so she will not have problem of mental she may
It will be subjected to her personality.
Also sir, it will be costing her means rupees 500. So there are many other ways that we can motivate ourselves. So what she likes, some of his hobbies, she can do that for means
Yeah, so this can be given in
self-motivate
replacement.
And to remain stress free. Very correct.
Right. So, I also feel that is the for her the mental health we will keep in the question, right, after our final the essentials, because I feel and then rest 3 have not given also. So, mental health we will talk about later on. Prepaid legal assistance, how many of you have given? 2 have given and 2 have not given, right. So, one logic, Abhishek is given?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Oh.
At last, yeah.
Acha, you have also given. So, 3 I have given, right, prepaid legal assistance. So, therefore, in that case because of this her divorce situation, right. So, they think that is she may require the legal assistance. So, let us put the tick mark here, right. So, therefore, we have come out with the 2000, right, then again 2000, then
1000.
1000, then
Sir, 300.
300 is there, right. Now, these company transport that we have to see, that is the because of the timings that we will discuss later on. This is done, this is done, this is done, plan D is done, daycare is done and company transport, right. Okay, this is done, okay, this is done, pre-legal daycare service and company transportation is there. Now, we, as I mentioned, that is about the timings, and we are having the 5300 so far. So, still you are having the enough this thing. So, I will go by the majority, where the majority has given, because that is a need of the our employees. Suppose I take they are employees, so they have shown the interest. Now, what is the majority plan? Other plans are in the majority are
Daycare.
how much?
2000.
2000 rupees.
2000, 7300, and then transportation all four have given. Yeah, so that is this 750 will be there. 8050 is there. Now, what we have not given?
Sir, we have reduced in life insurance part 1000. So
1000, that is but any other incentive which we, acha, there is a language class. Yeah. Yeah, why you people have not talked about even that thing? It is very surprising. They are playing the role of the executives, but they are students, but they have not given any, not a single one has given say that is the there is a college tuition, she should go in the evening and she should learn the foreign languages, she should learn the more languages because she is career oriented. So, she will having the multi languages so knowledge, then definitely her career will be much better, international assignments and all and all and all and all we keep on talking, but it has not motivated to my any student. Why? How much it is?
sir, language classes for 500 rupees.
500 rupees. So, what has stopped you? I would like to know. So, first I will ask Jivesh, why, what has stopped you to give her the language class development,
Sir, I thought
professional development?
I thought she is a working mother. So after her office, she would like the extra time to spend with her children. So as they are very young as of now.
She can learn from home, online course.
But sir, it is difficult for her to learn from home as she is there. There are three.
Responsibilities are there.
Yes, sir. Other responsibilities are there.
Okay, Rohit, what is about Europe? Why you have not given?
So I actually prioritize these things because health related problems and her children related problem are more prior than this college.
Professional development.
But still, if there would have been some coverage, then I would have gone for college tuition reimbursement because she can go for some long distance MBA or some other program that she is interested in, and it can.
Yes. So, that is I will take it as an essential part, because we have to give the opportunity for the professional development and we have to plan for the professional development. But my kids are so much involved into the personal problems that is they have ignored the professional development. No, but I will give professional development. How much amount is there?
So, college tuition reimbursement is
Proper language
Well,
500 for language
For language 500.
and college tuition 1000.
Acha, both you have not given. There are the two more aspects. One is the college tuition and one is the language. But both have not been given by anybody. Oh my God. Okay, that is 1000, right? So, it is going 9550. Okay. So, here now I leave to you, that is this legal assistance, right, because if I would recall this earlier, I would not have agreed for this, because the divorce is over. Now, after divorce there is nothing legal assistance is required, because if she is in the process of the divorce, okay, the lawyer is required. So, I do not think this is required. So, I will minus this, right, and then it will come 9250. Wow, very good. Please give the big hand. This is a best plan I have given. Okay. So, therefore, this is and I think this is okay. Though 5, 7,
Yes, sir.
7,000, 8,000 and then the 9,250. But you can give your comments also. So, what we have not done actually, right. So, therefore, daycare we have taken, right,
Yes, sir.
everything we have taken. We out of your plans, what we have not taken? One is the legal assistance we have not taken. Any other?
Mental health also we rejected.
Mental health we have not. Anything else?
We reduced in this life insurance part by 1,000.
That ABC, that of 3 parties very much reasonable. So, no, I have no problem. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7. So, 7 benefits we have given, 2 benefits are the professional development, but yes, so what is the message? What you learn from this? That you learn that is every individual is having the different needs and priorities. So, in motivation, the companies, what they have to plan, whenever you plan, please, this is my humble submission, whenever you plan for the incentives, compensation and benefits, please see that every individual is having different situations, different mindset, different priorities, and keep the cost to the company same. I am not going to increase the 9250. So, 9250 is same, but try to give, I am not saying that this is the best plan, right, because the best plan for the each individual is the best plan. We are not forcing that is go. If I force this, it means that company is having the fixed incentive plan and company is not giving the priorities and importance to these plans. But that is not the intention. What is the intention? Intention, that is each one should be given this freedom and not this one. This should not be the fixed plan, right, and that should be the variable plan, and let the people be happy. Suppose they want to give 2000, okay, let them give the 2000, let them take that particular plan, why not, right, it was 3000 earlier. So, then okay, it might be 3000, it is up to the individual, may not necessarily he will go by 9250, they have gone through the 9050 also.
Yes, sir.
So, it is not the monetary benefits that will motivate, that is no, I have to catch all this figure, no, what is important is independence, and that is the message of this exercise. Through this exercise you have seen that is the how we can give a message, that is the understand the motivation, understand the needs, let them give the freedom and let them design, so that your employee engagement and motivation that will be connected. So, I convey sincere thanks to all of you for participating. Thank you very much. Thank you.